There is no amount of breathing that will change the pain you're not willing to confront.
Okay, Brian, this is like a real treat for me. It was 2018 was the last time we saw each other on this podcast. And a lot's happened since then.
Mm-hmm.
In 2018, you broke your neck.
Pretty close to that. Yeah.
Okay, so what I want to do is bring that story back forward for folks that, were part of your journey in our community at that point. And then just like, how did that go? What have you learned? How are you different? But let's just ground our community in what happened in 2018.
Memorial Day weekend, I was with my sister and her kids and her brood of kids. She has 4. And we went to a playground down the street and we got into a game of tag, and the ground was hot. The playground was where everything was happening. So you had to be on the playground. Anyway, my nephew was chasing me on the ground and I found a ladder, went up a ladder, shot up the ladder. It was a spiraling ladder, got to the top, which was about 8 feet off the ground, 7, 8 feet off the ground. And I went to go stand up to go across the top because the ladder met a plank that goes across the top that you could walk across. But this was a jungle gym. It wasn't an adult jungle gym. So I didn't notice that the gap was not very big. And so when I went to go stand up, I was going full speed and took a bar directly into my skull, which compressed my spinal cord. And at C3-4, I had a spinal contusion. I was shut off immediately. So I went lights out. I remember vividly dropping, hitting my butt, and then everything was gone. But lights went on and like all these, sparks kind of went off. And I woke up on the floor, on the ground of this AstroTurf. And apparently I had done a backflip off of that. After I hit it, I fell off backwards and I landed, and I couldn't move. So I was like, oh.
Yeah.
At first I kind of was like, oh, I'm not moving. I can't feel my hands. After I was like, what am I doing down here? I'm like, oh no, I did something. And then I would say within 30 seconds, I had understood that I probably broke my neck. But I also knew there were 4 kids that were there and I didn't want to freak out, even though I was kind of like, oh, like there's a new life that's about to start.
For you.
Yeah, for me. A
quadriplegic life.
Yeah, at the moment, a quadriplegic. That changed in the ambulance ride. I started getting neurogenic pain in my arms, and the EMT he was good. He was good because he was like, "Look, I'm not a doc, and I can't tell you what's going to happen, but this is a good sign." I'm like, "This is pretty painful," and he goes, "Oh yeah," because that's a good sign. That means things are starting to come back. However, like, don't run with that. Like, I'm gonna, we're cutting off all your clothes still, and I mean, they cut everything off, strapped me down, took me in. My legs came back, I think at like 30 hours. However, everything was like, it was like a 3.5 week process to learn to walk again. And I had no idea, and nobody had any idea how much of that was going to come back with what had happened to the cord, because it definitely got pinched and you could see the bruising all the way in. It was a sketchy process, went into an emergency surgery within 10 days. They wanted to do it at the hospital, but I wouldn't let them because I had insurance at Stanford Medicine at the time. So I was like, I'm going to go to Stanford, and Andrew Huberman, who everybody kind of knows at this point. Nobody knew at that point, but I had been doing research with him. And I had reached out to him about neurosurgeons, and he got me in contact with 3, found the top guy, the number 1 guy at Stanford. So I ended up meeting this guy, and I knew instantly when I met the guy that this was going to be the surgeon. So that happened, the surgery happened. And then, I worked on recovery and kind of played a new game for a while.
What's the new game?
Well, at the point, it was like, I don't know, nobody knew what the recovery was going to be like. So, it was obvious, hey, you're not going to go on and deadlift.
The new game was getting base functioning back.
Base function. I basically could go walk. I mean, I think the first week I could walk like 100 yards. That was about it. Like what I was capable, and it looked like Bambi on ice, like literally. Like it was pretty trippy.
And you are recognized globally as a leader in physiology, in fitness, in breathing, more specifically. So here is one of the top leaders in our field of human performance that's taken a life-altering moment. And okay, that it happens. But what I'm struck by, there's two things I want to just highlight. One is the first few moments of your experience, and then the deeper learnings you learned about yourself through the process. So in the first few moments, it does reveal our framework and our psychology.
Yeah.
So why me as opposed to, oh, there's kids here. Okay, be cool. That's a different framework. So at the moment of intensity, crisis, trauma, high acute stress moments, they are forcing functions that reveal what we are actually made of from a physiological and a psychological perspective. Our belief systems are called into action or as a forcing function. So it sounds like, I don't know if it was, call it the first, second, or third beat, but the third beat certainly was there's kids here. It sounded like the second beat of your philosophy or your belief system was like, okay, my life is about to change. Like there's a deep awareness of a truth-telling moment, which I know you as a truth teller.
Yeah.
So that makes sense to me. The compassion and awareness for others makes sense for how I know you. And then was there something before that you left out that came before that?
I mean, in that process, in there, along with the kids, was there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be affected by this. Not
so
just
it
me.
still was about others.
It's not just about others. This was actually about me. It was like this is going to impact a lot of people around me. I was married to Erin at the time, and I knew it would impact her. I have a family.
Okay, so go to the first beat. I still think that's third beat, which is awesome. Like these beats are really important, and I hope the listeners going, oh, what is my first, second,
I knew
third
something had changed in a way that was, I instantly knew something had changed in a way that there's a new game, whether you like that or not. So there's going to be, how do you want to go about that process?
Second beat. That was second
Pretty
beat.
close.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was there? So describe to the listener what's on your knuckles.
Unscared.
Yeah. So it's a tattoo on each letter per knuckle, unscared. Yeah. And what I'm trying to get to is was there, oh shit.
No.
Was there a fear response anywhere in there? Or like being unscared requires a little bit of explanation, but I want to understand, was there a fear response at that moment? Which would make sense to me.
No.
Yeah. Okay. That doesn't make sense to me. So I want to because I think
something happened.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do about that at that
so
moment.
You
either accept that, and there's a history of me having to get to that point. There's a lot. Like almost 30-year history of me working towards understanding acceptance.
Yeah.
And being in a moment. But I knew
unpack that the 30 years in a couple sentences. This is really the fullness of your history.
I partied pretty hard. I got clean real young, 23.
Yeah. And that tells a full story in of itself for people that know who.
And I went through hardcore, rigorous self-help and program work, and then sought out teachers, like monks, like program, like Buddhist monks.
So you didn't go the 12-step.
I've been through that, but I also went other routes and looked at other things. And I'm a search, like I'm looking for the truth. Yeah. So it's like, it's not just one thing. And I have a pattern just like everybody else where it's like, oh, the group's doing this. I'm going to jump into this. This is so successful. Oh, here we are. I'm part of this collective. I'm going to think like the collective. No, that's not going to happen.
Finding Mastery is brought to you by Momentous. I am really excited about this partnership. After my podcast conversation with Kelly Starrett, he pulled me aside and he said, have you seen what Jeff Byers is building? Now, Jeff played in the NFL for a handful of years, and what he's doing now is he's building a world-class nutrition supplement company whose focus is in human performance. I was well aware, and Kelly put Jeff and I together and we met over dinner. I leaned in with all of the hard questions, and I left dinner really excited about what they're building and how they're going about it. Since then, Momentus has earned my trust, flat out. They are walking the walk. They're holding themselves to the highest standards. They're dedicated to working with top experts in the field. They're really doing something nice here. They are committed to sourcing and using only the highest quality ingredients. And they invest heavily in rigorous third-party testing. They call it the Momentus standard, and it's really become the gold standard for the industry. That's why they are also trusted by some of the most demanding, high-performing organizations in the world, especially in sport. Here's the products I'm using. Complete Sleep Bundle, for the obvious reasons. Collagen Shot, my wife loves this product. Ashwagandha for cognitive support. And I really like their creatine amino stack. It's great. It mixes really well. They got the right ingredients in there. They've done a really nice job there as well. They've got a ton of incredible supplements and formulas to choose from based on your unique needs. So if you're like me and you want to support your brain and body with supplements made and used by the best, just head to livemomentus.com/finding mastery or use the code finding mastery for 20% off all of my favorite products. Yeah, you and I think, have a similarity, and I think we're both cult proof.
Correct.
Yeah, like I
Correct.
the way that I am wired and the way I work and see the world, there's no flipping way I could be part of a cult.
No.
Like I'm
No.
not wired that way. And I'm not trying to say better than people in a cult.
No.
But it's a different psychology of people that want to.
There is no better.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's just different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you friends with Dr. Bob and Bill W?
I mean, I guess you could
Code for the 12 step
Yeah.
founders.
I mean, you could kind of say that.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to go to a meeting and hang out, and I could say,
Yeah, right.
I'm sober.
Yeah.
That's not my.
It was a part of the process, and then
That was a part of the process
There you
until it was no longer a part of that process, and I no longer identified as that. I don't like the identity aspect of things.
Why'd you choose drugs?
It was a very quick thing that made me feel free. Right.
And what was keeping you kept
I think a frustration that people didn't understand me
at a young age?
at a very young age. I mean, I was partying every weekend, every week, like all week, like sometimes, like
As a high schooler?
oh God, I was in a fraternity in high school. Like I was in what was called the
College fraternity?
No,
Oh.
but we started a high school fraternity called the Rat Pack that I literally, and the only way into that thing was through some obnoxious drinking game that they had created that very few people could get through.
Yeah.
And I breezed through it. Like, and I instantly,
This is where your genetics were helpful
rose to
early
party stardom.
delinquency.
And,
Early delinquency.
the irony of all of this is that many of those individuals that were a part of that have come to me and have lived in my homes and have gone through the process that I've gone through, and I've forced them to make
sobriety.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
forced them to go to meetings, even though I wasn't going to meetings at the time. I'm like, no, you will go through this process if you're going to live here, because you're not going to go back to that other way. You're also going to train. You're also going to do this stuff anyway.
Yeah, you're a disruptor from a young age to even how you've disrupted the high performance, human performance industry. And so the counter, you and I both have a deep affinity for the counterculture approach to life. Like when the world's zigging, let's look at what the zag could be. And so I really
we
appreciate.
critically think. So it's an impossibility to be caught up into a cult-like mentality.
Yeah.
It's an impossible. It literally.
But you have something different than me here, is that I think most people would recognize that you would have more of an extreme commitment to the counterculture. I mean, look at your arms.
Yeah.
Like
That's very normal right now.
Well, they are, but you were early on a tattoo world.
I was the first person in high school to be tattooed.
Yeah.
And my coach did not like it.
What sport?
Water polo, swimming.
Yeah. So it's pretty exposed.
Yeah.
So let's just do a fun, before we get into like your take on high performance and how you're contributing to scores of people being the better version of themselves. Let's go through your arms. Let's go through your back and your body. Like, what are some of the tattoos that you have that have meaning, that are important, that help others understand who you are?
I don't know that anybody's really ever asked me to do that.
It's so intimate.
There is, it
Isn't
is.
it? It's so
most of what I
personal.
have on me is through obviously symbolism, but I have a deeper connection towards symbolic art. They all have symbolism. I mean, I've rewritten things like on my hands as my like the year I was born, right?
Yeah.
And then I've got 1998, and that was the year the light bulb went on. That was when I changed. But it wasn't just getting sober. It was I understood. I understood that this was there was a path towards the truth that, as I understood it at that point, was going to be a lifelong process. It was like becoming a monk in essence, but it was a very different.
It's like a second birth for you was 1998.
100%.
And that birth was to get to the truth.
Yeah, it was just, that was the pursuit.
And you went physiology.
I landed there a couple of years after.
Okay.
I was still in the restaurant industry, thank God. And I was still cutting it in there, and I'd reached a high enough level there to where I understood that was not what I really wanted to do. I mean, I was working at a 4 or 5 star restaurant. I was a maitre d'. I was running the show, kind of the floor at the time. I had cleaned, I had bussed, I had waited, I had done all these things. But that was not what I wanted to do. God, the service industry, man, people, it's just, it's real tough. Even though I'm in kind of a service world, I now have learned enough to where I'm doing things the way I want to be doing them with people.
So this conversation with you could go so many ways. We can get into the tactics of breathing and enhancing physiology to impact your psychology, which is, I want to do that with you.
Yeah.
But it's also a life design conversation.
Yeah.
If somebody could really understand what you understand about becoming your very best, what showed up in the moments of your injury, what showed up prior to that, 1998, what showed up in how you worked from the service industry into entrepreneurship, what would be a few things that you would hope people could embrace and apply in their lives to design a life that is great?
Yeah. I mean, I'll start just because with the breathing thing, like we'll get this one out of the way.
Yeah.
And Rob Wilson, who I used to work with, said this. I think he said it at his seminar, and it stuck with me. But
Rob
used to work with me. He's a coach. Anyway, he's in Virginia Beach. I think he's working with a lot of the like operators, et cetera, now with Virginia High Performance. At any rate, he was working with me when I was teaching. We were out teaching Art of Breath, et cetera. And he said something, and it was that this is one of the truest statements I've ever heard. There is no amount of breathing that will change the pain you're not willing to confront.
I like that a lot.
Looking a bit deeper at that.
I love that.
When I had my accident, and when I kind of woke up in 1998, those were moments where self-abandonment just started to disappear. That sits at the root of all our problems. Every problem we've got. And it shows itself with the people we work with as, I really love what I'm doing. However, I don't know how to shut it off. I just push and push and push. You're doing that in a way that has become an attachment. So at the level, you understand this, where it's like, well, now it's become an attachment. So you can't love what you're doing anymore because there is no love. There is attachment or love. That's what you get.
So yes, the way that I capture that is the performance-based identity that I am what I do and how well I do it, which is it's a poison pill.
Oh yeah.
And
I mean, there's documentary after documentary of professional athletes out there. I mean, like The Last Dance is a perfect example of like, wow, I don't want to be Michael Jordan.
I wish I have. At some point, I hope to meet him and understand him.
I've heard he's a wonderful person, actually. Like, and he seems now to be pretty at ease. Like, I've seen him with the race car scene because he's involved. He owns, some of that stuff. But
did you work with that team? I spent some time with that team.
No,
and they push. Those guys push.
Well, you should push. It is performance. However,
when I think we're gonna vibe in the same way about the documentary. I was like, oh man,
yeah,
that is the dark side.
It ended. I mean, the ending is perfect example. His family's not around him. He's not showcasing his family. He's not showcasing anything happy at this point. Nobody's showcasing anything happy at this point.
Right.
I mean, although you and I got to see the entire thing play itself out with the Chicago Bulls, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, that mentality also has shown up in You See the Weight of Gold with what Phelps did with the documentary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember interviews happening with athletes who I've worked with. I mean, there are athletes I've worked with that were in that documentary.
Hmm.
I've watched that. I've cut off relationships because of the way it's just, there's no getting through to the athlete of like, dude, if you don't figure out a process about life through this, like that helps you become like more in touch with your soul, then you're out. Like I'm out.
Yeah.
I can't help you.
Okay. So that's where I want to go back to self-abandonment. But what you just said is, people ask me all the time, like, what's your secret? Well, first, there are no secrets. No. Okay. There's no 7 steps. There's no hacks or tricks or tips. Like, it's just some fundamental principles that are applied consistently. Like, what's your secret? Like, how are you able to work with such visible high performers, like people that are doing it on the world stage? And I think part of it is like, I'm looking for people that will do the work. And that work to me is the work that you have fundamentally organized your life around, which is to get to the honesty and to have be truth tellers about how to get better at something, to not be selfish. These are my criteria, that the people are not selfish. They're actually wanting something bigger and to be part of something bigger. And they are interested in mastery of craft and mastery of self. What you just said, if you're using the craft high performance thing, but it's not touching your soul, you're like, I'm not interested. Did I get that right?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, it was funny because during the Olympics, the surfing took place in Tahiti.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yay, French Polynesia.
Yeah.
Anyway, the guys who were commentating, we were watching it, and one of the guys goes, this is how surfing works, because he's explaining. He goes, the person who looks like they're having the most fun in the water is winning.
Yeah, it's such a good statement.
And I'm like,
it's such a good statement. Yeah.
If you ain't having fun, and look, that doesn't mean it's not going to get hard.
Of course.
Like, that's the problem, is that when you start to think it all has to be hard, you've just missed.
So tie that back to the self-abandonment. What does that mean? What does self-abandonment mean? And what was the emotion that you were experiencing as you were describing that part?
Yeah.
What was that?
I mean, it's a bit of a deep sadness, but a deep, like, kind of, I mean, it's just, unfortunately, it's just where most people are at. Like, self-abandonment takes on many different forms. A lot of the people that I'll deal with, so if you talk about a professional athlete, it's, if they're not competing, if they're not winning, they're not good enough. Some people do it by simply doing like codependency. There is self-abandonment. Like, alcoholism isn't actually the problem. It's codependency that's the problem. Granted, that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be people who would be alcoholics who wouldn't end up dying by themselves, but it'd be very few if there weren't people who were running around cleaning up the mess and okaying everything. There's those types of people. Then there's the types of people who are working, who are running businesses or getting into a business, and they cannot not be in contact with that business or the people they're interacting with at any point or most points. They have no boundaries. Basically, what self-abandonment looks like is I don't have boundaries. And when that starts to occur, I think the life of a fighter is very interesting. And I've worked with a number of them.
You're talking about cage fighting and MMA.
Yeah. Like so I've spent enough time with John Jones, and I was introduced to him a number of years ago through Ari, and
Ari Emanuel at WME. Ari
Emanuel. And, I was with him before the DC fight and introduced him to some stuff. And, what my experience with John is that when that dude is in fight mode, that is the mode you want to be in. Everything is towards that goal, and he's paying attention to everything. And the team that guy is surrounded by, I mean, I've been blown away, like the entire team of how these guys operate, what they're looking at, what they're reading, what they're teaching John about his opponent and how he's doing it, and the things they make the environment super like it's always positive. That's a fight camp.
Not at the abandonment of truth. So
Correct.
It's not the hype machine.
Now there quite possibly could be things outside of John's life, as the media and many people have found out that are going on that are not.
Yeah, he's recognized as probably one of the greatest to get in the cage.
Oh, he is.
Right. Yeah.
Without
and I mean historically. I'm not just saying
he's the greatest MMA fighter of all time.
Yeah.
That said, there are people who are trying to come to take that at some point. And I've experienced many fighters in fight camps, and most fight camps are like that. So the life of a fighter is pretty interesting, but outside of that, it gets pretty destructive.
Yeah, it's a violent. It is a violent game.
Destructive.
Did you know I cornered 3 fights?
No, I did not.
Yeah, so I got to corner 3 fights in the UFC. Oh, so head coach, me, which was the second head coach, as they like to call it, and our striking coach. So the 3 of us. Yeah. So. Rico Ciparelli was one of the early coaches in MMA. And I was part of some really radical camps, Randy Couture,
Oh, yeah.
And then, but I did not corner Randy, to be clear. But I get to corner 3 fights. And
that's
so,
awesome. You get the whole experience of like,
the whole thing, like,
from the back end and
what it means to like love somebody and to see them go into a cage.
Yeah.
And potentially be physically and emotionally damaged.
Yeah.
You know, there's a great emotional risk when for some of them. Some people can go in and get their ass beat and they're fine.
Yes.
You know, but some people, there's an emotional risk that is right down to the
been
core.
around fighters like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that fight is happening with everybody.
What do you mean? That's a cool statement.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is kind of where I was pivoting, pushing this was like, the fight camp is a great, unfortunately MMA has taken the martial arts and the way the martial arts was developed has taken a backseat to what's happened with MMA at this point. There are very few people who really embrace or embody the martial art, the art side of this, the art, like the art of war, like, being disciplined. Like I think Georges St. Pierre embodied that a lot. I don't know him.
He was on the pod. He was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He truly does have that sense
if you
about
get
him.
through the thick French accent, he's amazing. But he really did have the art of the martial way.
Yes.
He and he was a physical specimen, which was pretty cool to watch.
And I think self-abandonment occurs as a result of what we learn from our parents, which is by no means something that was maliciously done. Some cases maybe, but it doesn't matter who you are. It's going to happen because you're going to onboard their emotional intelligence to you, and you're going to mirror the behaviors of what it is goes on in that world. And then the other aspect is from a cultural and societal standpoint, we are literally being programmed into self-glorification and self-promotion.
And that's self-abandonment?
That is quite literally
abandoning yourself.
Abandoning yourself.
Your full self, your true self for the highlight reel. For the highlight reel.
You're looking for more worldly feelings, things that are manufactured. Meaning if I pray, so this is something I caught on to pretty early, was when people would praise me for what I've done. And, you got to be, I started to become very, very careful of enjoying that.
Yeah, that's a drug.
And that led me to, I mean, emotions pretty much are these binding agents to an experience, good and bad or indifferent. And if I get excited about doing something, and this is the interesting thing about the celebrity world, is it's like, I mean, I've got a lot of friends that are like A-list people, and I've watched things happen and I'm like, wow, I do not want that.
Andrew.
Andrew's a good example. But I mean, you take somebody like Tobey Maguire, who I'm friends with. I mean, Toby and I went up to Pelican Bay together. We went up to the prison up there. We were in downtown once working, and we were at this bakery downtown. I forget the name of it. They work with ex-cons, right? And
Homeboys.
Yeah, Homeboys. Yeah, we went down there.
He was on the founder was on the pod as well.
Was he?
Yeah, like
so
our world's
Toby and I
like
went down there to
circle
do
in so
some
many
stuff.
ways.
And,
Yeah.
he brought his celebrity and I brought a lot of the breathing stuff. And we
Cool.
taught a whole room of these guys and they were like loving it. But the moment one person, when we were outside, like, oh, that's Spider-Man.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I kid you not. There were 1,000 people that just went out of nowhere outside in the streets of LA, like around Homeboy, and it was like picture. And Toby was as gracious and as like kind and open to doing pictures and saying hi to people. And I'm like, whoa, dude, like this is crazy. Like you see this stuff and you get these experiences, but you then hear about, well, these are drugs, like and it's. Most people don't get the fact that like the praise thing is not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And using not a good thing is not the appropriate language. It's something that's going to have another side to it.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
like you're editing your words because you don't want to say good and bad.
Correct.
You don't want to be binary in your language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
But if you're going to get excitement from something, you're guaranteed. This is the problem with relationships. Is I get into a relationship that I have an attachment to, that some chick drives me wild and makes me excited. There's going to be a big low.
Yeah, it's funny you bring this because there's a really clear research that on a first date, if you want to cement the relationship or have a better chance of it continuing, get in a fast car, go really fast around corners, and
That's a beautiful thing,
right? And
That's
so
great.
then both people have this adrenaline pairing, and there's a neurochemical exchange of binding,
Yeah.
and then therein lasts. That's like the first hit of the drug. Like, oh, I'd like more of that. She drives really fast, or he drives really fast.
Yeah.
Let's do that again. It's not about the driving; it's about the neurochemical bonding that's happening in an invisible way. So, if the listener wants to,
Yeah, I mean,
is in the dating world.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily suggesting.
I mean, this is why things like, CrossFit or extreme endurance, events, like people bind to these things because they're extremes, right? And I do both, right? I participate in those. However, 20 years later, 25 years later, I have a very different relationship to those things and how I work with inside those.
Okay, so let's go back to the life design piece.
Yeah.
Let's do a forcing function.
Yeah.
3 words. This is just like made to be more fun than it is like serious, but 3 words that you say, I wish people really understood this. I think we all want a great life. I think everybody I know wants to live a great life. So what would be 3 words that you would say have been important for you living and co-designing a great life?
Consistency.
Cool.
The truth.
I knew you were going to go there. Yes. Get the process to get to the truth.
Yeah. So, and I mean, this is how I think of mastery, right? Like, so Sandra asked me to think of like just for the next couple months, think about, right? Like, so, it's a consistent process towards the truth. That's it. That's mastery.
Your definition of mastery.
That is quite literally, and my experience tells me this. I've participated in Shaolin monk programs. I've participated in a Buddhist monk semi-program. I have gone through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have worked with multiple therapists in the beginning because I needed that sort of thing. But I've hired in particular people who I wanted that mind. I wanted to understand that mind, to learn from that mind. Certain physiologists, exercise physiologists I follow, people doing certain things, certain training modalities, strength, power, like putting myself inserting myself into these worlds, cooking. Like that's my outlet, right? Mm-hmm. Like at the end of the day, if I get to go cook, that's the day, because I can go get creative and I don't have to think about everything else I was doing. And so it's all a process, but it's like I wake up in the morning and the first thing I do is I'm moving my joints around, opening that stuff up, going through a process of moving the joints, because after I've done that, I feel 180 degrees different than when I did when I woke up. So I've learned that process of me getting up and doing that, then doing some coffee, but then going and starting, hey, what am I going to do first? I'm going to go walk.
Okay, wait, on the joint movement thing, is this like somebody could reference this online, like a Taekwondo type of joint movement where you're just kind of circling, you're not breaking a sweat.
So
you're just
yoga
moving
does
separate.
something like this, like with sun salutations, but the martial art, like a Shaolin monk program, Qigong, like these are very gentle, easy. There is a reason why these ancient practices have these things at the foundation of what they're doing.
Very cool.
There's a very good reason.
You're literally just moving your wrists around, your knees
figure
around,
out what works for you if you want to take some of this, but don't do what everybody's doing. Figure out what works for you, but
That's cool.
do something. If you're not moving,
cool.
This is big problem. I mean, this is part of stuff I test with athletes and people who come to me.
Yeah, cool.
What's your morning lactate level? There's a direct correlate with lactate levels and cortisol. So I know what's going on.
You're not doing lactate testing and cortisol testing every morning now.
I have with me.
Yeah.
Just to see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of that scientific process. It's like, oh, sure, I can go talk about this study, but if I'm not actually applying this, well, I have no practical application of that.
Yeah. Cortisol spit tests are great in the morning, but it's so, there's so much friction in it.
No. Lactate's the easiest thing.
A
prick,
finger
blood,
prick.
boom, and get the reading. What does it say? All right.
Under recovered, over recovered. I'm sorry, overtrained, under recovered.
But after I go for a 5-mile walk, which I typically go in the range of 4 to 5 miles.
So that's after the coffee or tea or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's a 5-mile walk.
Yeah.
And how many cups of tea for you?
I'll do 2 espressos.
Okay. Yeah. Throughout the day or just?
That's typically my day.
Yeah.
There might be one more during the day, but
I'm at like 3 cups of green tea, Earl Grey or green tea. That's kind of my jam.
Tea's not my thing. I tried that. It just never became my thing.
Yeah.
And
okay.
My wife she's Italian and she is very into espresso. Like that's the only thing she drinks. So
my wife's Cuban. So it's about the Cuban coffee.
Literally in the morning. Like, we're drinking espresso. You're not allowed to drink any of that other crap. At any rate, the walking happens when I get back.
5-mile walk? It's like an hour.
Hour and a half.
Yeah.
Hour and a half.
And what are you doing during that time?
That's where
you're walking.
That's where the processing, all the junk and everything, the creative, all the processing of what and how I feel on that walk tells me a lot.
So it's it's not a traditional walking meditation, but it is
you're out there 90 minutes. So
getting to know yourself.
Yeah. I'm not on my phone. I'm not listening to music. I don't do that. I don't even train and listen to music. I might have classical on in the background if I'm training, but like I don't have anything. I no longer do that. I used to, blast death metal or punk music. And those days are gone.
Got it. Okay.
It's just a different evolution at this point. But I'll walk and I know exactly how I feel on that walk and what I can feel like my body can handle that day. Whether I can go at it real hard later. But then I eat. Like I eat 5-6 times a day. I mean, I put out 4 to 6 hours of movement a day, like heavy duty.
Training or coaching?
But no, between walking, moving, in the gym, and playing in the evening usually. Or if there is a swell, I'm surfing during the day. But even if there's not, I'll typically go down to the beach at the end of the day and I'm in the water screwing around, playing. But I will literally go body surf the shore break. Yeah. Like just to go screw around so that I'm playing.
It's fun. So I grew up surfing and I have the ocean was like one of my most important altars, like a place that I would go get right. And now this is like sad, but I look at it and I'm not getting in the water. Like, this sounds terrible. Everyone's into the cold, hard. I'm like, I don't want to be cold right now.
Well, no, you shouldn't have to go be cold.
So I'm just not doing it. It was just like.
I just put on a wetsuit if it's cold.
Yeah. Well,
but I've got enough cold training in me. Like I've done enough cold exposure. It's not like my wife gets very cold. So she'll get out of the water real quick. But look, that's where the idea of discipline has to come in, right? Like I'm going to have to discipline to do this, but it's not really I've learned
that sounds more fun.
Yeah.
Getting in the cold there's a discipline. There's an active discipline.
Slightly, if you can get to a point, I think if you're consistent enough with something, you start to see the process and whether you like it or not, whether this, I just don't believe people are truly, this is where the self-abandonment thing comes in, is that people really are truly doing what it is they want. They're not doing what they want, and they're doing what they think they should be doing.
Well, that's where I was going to ask about bro science.
Yeah.
That phrase,
Mm-hmm.
I think it feeds right into like people not scrubbing research or understanding it, which that's fine. But then feeling as though because a scientist has said, this is what you should do without really understanding it, that maybe it's not right for you and your physiology or the time of your life. But like the idea, yeah, man, I was, the research on cold is like, but they haven't actually done the work. They've just listened to you talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your take on bro science and what is your take on cold?
Yeah. I think you need, I think it's pretty important to understand what it is you want to participate
in life.
Whatever. If you're going to participate in something, go understand that.
Like if you want to be
this is our problem, is we don't want to go understand it. We don't want to go put ourselves into this and do it and then read about it or look into the physiology of it. And my job has become quite literally to tell people what truth actually is, because their mind's lying to them in most cases. Mm-hmm. And mine does it, yours does it. We live in a world that perpetuates that to happen.
How do you coach people when they're pulling back from something or making up a story about something?
You've got, and as you know this, like you're dealing with personalities. So you're dealing with very different people all over the place. You take somebody like an Ari Emanuel, who is quite, he's so easy to work with because I understand what drives him.
Well, you've had a decade-long relationship. And for folks that don't know who he is, like go watch Entourage, the TV show.
Yeah. And he's even more,
after.
He's way more than that though. The guy is literally he's at the head of multiple businesses, and he loves what he does.
He is the rainmaker in Hollywood.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He crushes, and he's 62 years old.
How many clients do you see per month?
I have less than 10 people I work with.
Yeah.
On purpose.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's not the issue. And I know the listeners, I want some of that. And I'm just setting it up that the list is probably long, but what are some of the criteria or interests that you have to take a new client on? Like, how do you gate that?
Somebody's ready for the truth.
I love that. Okay. All right. Go back to cold.
Yeah. So the cold is, I got into the cold because of Laird Hamilton, who stuffed me in his icebox after sitting there for watching him sit there for 3 minutes, having a conversation with me as though he was sitting in a tub, a warm tub. So I was like, oh, I could do this.
Can do that.
And at the time, his icebox, his cold plunge was in this dungeon that he had in his backyard that literally was hidden from underground. You get in, it could be very claustrophobic if you got into a sketchy situation, at which point when I got into the ice, I was like, what? And everything just went like that. And he laughed his ass off.
You had a panic attack?
I didn't have a panic attack. I was like, how long am I supposed to be in here? And he goes, 3 minutes. And I got out within 10 seconds. And he fell on the ground, laughing, rolling on the ground.
Classic.
And
so this must have been a while ago.
Yeah, oh yeah, this is probably 10, 12 years ago.
So where are you on cold now?
I use it, but not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great medium for exposing some things with people. I've had clients that it was good for and was working for them. However, they were just addicted to the whole damn process. So I was like, we should probably pull this out and do something else that I would be far more beneficial to what is going on with you than just this.
Yeah, there's some really interesting, compelling research around what it can do, from a physiological health and adaptation standpoint. whether it's brown fat or fill in the blanks. Like,
go for a walk.
Yeah,
If
there's
you're,
other ways
interested
to do it.
in fat, like I've harped on this. If you're sitting here talking to me about brown fat and you don't walk 10,000 steps a day, you don't have any business. Like, I'm not listening to you anymore.
What I'm most interested in it is that, so as a psychologist, the walk to cold matters.
Oh yeah.
And it's like the cold is like the truth moment. You meet yourself on the walk to the cold. And as soon as you get that, and it all comes up, you're like, are you trying to escape, or can you work with yourself to back yourself, to calm yourself
This is the way I look at the cold. This is the way I use it with people.
Yeah. I think it's a psychological training that that outweighs the physiological benefits. And there are good physiological benefits.
Dr. Lisa Regan pointed this out to me, is that, the most effective tool for the cold is 30 seconds in the cold, 30 seconds in a warm water. Like sauna.
That was
the contrast.
But that's old research.
Correct.
That's been around for a long time.
But that has been the most beneficial process for an athlete in terms of
that's when you
getting the biggest bang out of your
When
body.
you go in a football locker room, there's a cold and a hot tub. And guys get in the cold for a little bit, and then they get in the hot, and then back and forth. So, all right.
So it becomes a psychological thing.
1,000%
is what it is. And so if we can use it for that, great. We use it for that in the beginning, but I mean,
cold shower for me 2 to 3 times a week. Cold means all the way cold. And, am I getting the benefits that you would hope I would get from a cold shower 2 to 3 times a week?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, so most of us aren't willing to go down the road of getting an adaptation first.
Yeah.
The short-term benefits of the cold are like, see if you can get a 3-minute cold plunge. You don't need anything beyond that. And anything beyond 3. So anything under 3 minutes, awesome. Do that consistently for, I don't know, a month. Cold takes a lot. Cold is a much shorter term adaptation than heat. Most people don't spend the time getting heat adapted, even though they're in a sauna almost every other day, right? They're just not actually getting the benefits of heat getting their core temperature up to a point to where they can really handle something. I did an article for Plunge about this because they put out a new sauna, and I helped them understand a little bit about that. I've been screwing around with heat for close to 25 years because of the crazy endurance events that I would go do. But
so wait, go cold. Go stay with cold, and let's get to heat, and then also do cold.
I think getting to a point where it gets easy, done. Now just intersperse it, like just toss it in from time to time.
Cool. Okay.
That's where it works. And this is like strength and conditioning. Like, hey man, how often are you squatting? Like every day?
Really?
Really? Like, probably shouldn't squat heavy every day. And nobody's doing that, but
shorthand benefits for cold for the listener who's not switched on to the benefits.
Oh, you're going to feel calmer throughout the day. You're going to feel more engaged, but calmer. That's that parasympathetic. That's the rebound effect. So, just going back to Hans Selye's work, you look at the stress response, right? This is all we're doing. This is anything we're talking about right now.
It's like Hans Selye was like 1920, right?
Yeah.
Some of his original research. So this is like when you stress the system, there's a flush rebound effect to recover.
You're looking for a positive rebound effect of the stress response. Yeah. And the cold can provide that if done correctly.
What about the counterpoint to cold, which is all this stress, acute stress, we should be more precise with that language, is an accelerant to aging?
I would say if you can't slow down a bit as a result of the tool you are trying to use, then in today's world, then your tool is ineffective. So stop using it.
Got it. Okay. All right.
So it's a learning process. If I'm going and doing cold plunges in the morning just to ramp myself up so that I can go at 800 miles an hour all day long, probably not the thing.
Not the thing. Okay. The glow is unreal.
Yeah.
When you get out of a cold.
It is.
It is
super shiny.
Yeah. Super shiny. Okay. So let's go heat, and then let's go kind of the bread and butter for you, which is breathing.
Yeah.
Heat. I'm not versed on heat research.
Heat is fantastic. Heat is far, in my opinion, heat is far superior as a training model.
Infrared or like dry sauna?
So
versus
there's three
benefits.
things we can do here.
Okay.
So you could have infrared, which is great. It's okay. You're going to be in there longer, just because it doesn't get as warm and it takes time to get your insides warmer.
Mm-hmm.
The traditional, you can get much hotter and you can make bigger adaptations with, from my perspective, meaning you can adapt to going into over 200 degree sauna, and then and being in there for a long period of time, over time. Now, you don't necessarily need to do that. You could also get what quote unquote are called sweatsuits. So what we all remember, wrestlers,
the trash bag, type of thing.
And fighters will go do. That is another way of heat training, is going and starting that. But to be intelligent about this, you want to be monitoring something. And the feeling I go with is the mild claustrophobic feeling. That is that is the cutoff point for this is done. If you are going to use a technology, heart rate's a great way to go, because the heart responds to heat pretty well. And watching the heart rate increase. So I like, if you go in a warm sauna, 150 degrees, okay, and you're on a bike in that sauna, right? Or you just do squats on the minute, like 5 or 10 squats every minute on the minute. You're going to see your heart rate go up much faster than you will if you're outside of that sauna. Pay attention to that. And when those feelings start to come on, and then do not override those things. About 130, 140 heart rate, but that's not, that is not necessarily the prescription, but you don't really want to exceed that at first. But when you get heat adapted, those markers work like they would outside of the sauna. And there is a very close relationship with altitude training and heat training, meaning you could probably get yourself closer to ready to going to altitude by being heat adapted, which is a very easy thing to do, while not having access to altitude.
It's interesting. Yeah, you're straight down the performance lane here, and I'm more interested right now in the kind of longevity health, organ health piece around heat. And so is there enough there for you to say?
Yes. Getting in a sauna and spending 2 weeks every day and working up to about 20, 30 minutes of being in that sauna. Dry.
Not infrared.
You could be infrared. But you're going to have to be a little bit longer.
Yeah. If you were to buy one, do you have one? Do you have one?
I do.
Yeah. If you were to recommend someone to purchase,
Plunge makes a great sauna. I have it.
Yeah. And again, heat, dry or infrared?
Dry.
So you went dry for your personal.
Oh yeah.
Not infrared.
I had an infrared. And then when Laird and I started screwing around with things, and he dunked me in the cold, I was in his sauna and he could hang out. And I had been doing sauna and heat exposure work for quite some time. He could hang out in the sauna far longer than I could. And we were in his traditional and it was over 200 degrees.
Got it. Okay.
So I was like, oh, so there's something here that I'm not getting.
Breathing. Take us home. Like, help us be better. I'm going to make a big statement.
Yeah.
As a classically trained psychologist with specialization in sport and performance, that I think without some combination of breathing training, insight work, which is kind of talk therapy, and mindfulness work, it almost is negligent in thinking that we're going to get the results that we really want to get. If we look at anxiety alone, insight work, it's a best case science. Insight work is really good. Without breathing, I'm not sure how it really gets done anymore. So for the folk who has some anxiousness under there, I'd love for you to speak to what you understand about the benefit of breathing. Keep it away from performance for a minute and go straight down the lane of like well-being, wellness, vibrance in life. So how would you help us understand the benefits of breathing in that way?
It's a remote control to your chemistry. It's to controlling your nervous system. It is literally the remote control to slow things down or speed things up in some cases, but we'll talk about slowing it down.
Yeah, mostly.
And this is where breathing kind of gets a little dangerous. It's not the answer. It's simply there to get you to self-reflect so that the moment you either become the victim or you get into these self-abandonment behaviors, you can check yourself and say, oh, I'm responsible for me. I'm responsible for the experience I'm having right now. There are POWs, there are people who've gone through much more horrific things than I have gone through in this moment sitting in traffic right now.
Yeah.
Or my kid playing soccer.
But that's psychological awareness work. That's insight work. And when you pair that with
when
a protocol,
you apply breathing,
right? Yeah.
You give yourself the opportunity to change how your chemistry is working. So if I do some breathing in the morning, let's say,
okay,
I've altered my chemistry in a way.
Downregulated, created more space.
My nervous system is downregulated. I'm opened up the vasculature more. I'm bringing on these effects, these very positive effects that allow me to be much more clear in my thinking, and maybe buying me some time or some place to where I'm not as reactive to certain things, that then I can self-reflect a lot easier.
Yeah. So the image in my mind of what you just described is like, let's go, instead of waking up and getting into the rapids of life.
Yeah.
There's plenty of rapids now.
Yeah.
Let's take a moment and let's actually go upstream where it's really kind of calm. And we know that there's a waterfall down there and there's rapids that are going to show up, but let's go upstream where we can be calm and embrace, like literally have a calm boat before we get into the rapids, as opposed to just waking up and going straight to rapids. And so when you go to the breathing stuff, like for the down regulation, I love the joystick analogy because it is one of the only things that
Casper Van der Meulen came up with that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah. Meaning that you can, it's one of those, it's automatic. Breathing is automatic. It's been happening the last 45 minutes. And you can also control it. And that's the joystick, right?
Yeah.
And when you pull back on the joystick, I guess, for down regulation, am I oversimplifying it when I just say basically it's a longer exhale than inhale?
Yeah.
Is the down regulation.
Yeah.
Okay. And are you thinking more about, I would love for you to walk through the gears for performance in a minute. Yeah, I think that's really important.
I wouldn't have done this
without that.
Yeah, without that.
Okay. I am not interested in exhale through the mouth for down regulation training outside of a fitness performance environment.
Mm-hmm.
Can you move me off of that? Is there a case for exhaling through the mouth that?
Yeah, I mean, the cases that I understand are, where somebody is stressed out. And they've gotten into a position where they're holding their breath a lot.
Yeah.
It can be beneficial, but repeated, you're not going to want to do that.
Not going to want to do
repeated exhales through the mouth.
Correct.
Consistently.
Okay. Right.
I mean, you can, but what we're regulating is CO2 when we do that, not oxygen. So you're getting plenty of oxygen regardless of what's going on. So if I exhale through the mouth, I'm offloading excess CO2. So I'm changing.
You're dumping.
I'm changing the
CO2
pH, which means if the pH is changing, that then changes how the oxygen and many other components are operating. And so when I breathe through the nose, it buys me an opportunity to really filter the air, change the air, use the diaphragm, and then humidify the air again as it comes out, but it slows it down from coming out excessively, right. so that everything's kind of staying regulated. So if I slow down my breathing exponentially, you'll start to heat up, and there's thermodynamics going to work. Is the system is now opening up. The vasculature is dilating. You're becoming more parasympathetic dominant.
Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't have that nuance. So say I'm having a high heat moment. Okay, my body temperature's heated up. I'm going to go do something that's got some emotional kinetic energy around it. I'm feeling it. I'm a little more activated than I like to be. I want to downregulate, but my body's also hot. You would suggest don't humidify your breathing. In that case, would you say dump the C?
Yeah, you could do that physiological sigh like Andrew talks about, like
yeah, which is now double inhale.
Double inhale.
So you're opening your bronchioles on the second one.
You get a full,
yeah,
and then you can exhale. It's just a sigh.
So why is he going through the mouth? Why is he suggesting mouth breathing?
Well, that's what he did the research on, and he found it to be effective. He found it to be more effective than box breathing, in fact.
And box breathing, for the listeners, like, you make up the unit, but it's 4 seconds in, 4 second pause, 4 second exhale, 4 second, or 5, 5, 5, 5, or 6, 6, or 1, 1.
And that's
whatever.
The stuff I like to work with.
Which is,
I push the boundaries of that. Like, hey, where are you at? Like, okay, let's just say we were using box breathing with an athlete or somebody. Let's use a rhythm that really makes you calm. Great. When that becomes very, very easy, let's push it up a bit. Let's use a 5-10 count.
When did we meet at the High Performance Hurley USA Surfing Camp? Was that like 2014, 12, 14?
Something like that.
I can't remember. But so you introduced me to, it was like a 4-4-8-4, 5-5-10-5.
Yeah, that's 1-1-2-1.
Yeah, 1-1-2-1 protocol. I don't know if I've told you how much of a game changer that's been for me. Like, it's been a radical game changer.
That's a more advanced kind of, but that's a great rhythm.
So I've been using that as almost a stress inoculation, meaning that, so I've worked up to, maybe this is child's play for you, but 11-11, 22-11.
No, that's great.
Yeah. And I feel like I've had to work to get there. Okay.
That's a long.
It's a lot of work to do.
Rhythm.
And I want to escape at around breath 8. I just want to stop the whole freaking thing.
8 rounds into it.
So 8 breaths into that, I'm using this for like a moment of acute.
That's where that place is.
Yeah. So I meet myself in a near panic moment. I trip over an anxiety wire around 7 or 8. And it first happened at like 7, 7, 14, 7, breath number 8.
So that's an important thing that you just said.
Yeah.
That maybe the listeners should probably hear.
Okay.
Because anxiety we have a physiological marker for it.
Yeah.
And
it's not just psychological. No. There's a physiological, it's the interaction between the two. Go there.
There's a sensitivity through the nervous system that's occurring with CO2.
Go there.
And you hit it with your 8 breaths in,
yeah,
which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's essentially what I push people to do, including myself, with things. Is it's like, hey, we want to push these rhythms a bit so that we can get to another level, so that the unconscious breathing, so you're not getting into these tripwires, these places, so you're remaining calm and not having to go.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Your everyday is, you don't know I'm breathing.
Right. That's right.
Right. So
I've gone from a chest breather to a diaphragm breather through training.
Yeah, you would with going 11, 11, 12. But, like going into the free diving stuff is even like, I really love breath hold work. But, like Erwan LaCour has taken this on, he's the guy who started MoveNat. He really has done a good job with the breath hold stuff. I mean, the guy holds his breath for 7 minutes. He's got a world record now. And he's got a program for developing breath hold work that's centered around understanding that psychology that interacts with those panic switches that are occurring.
Yeah, that's right.
We all get them. It's
we
set
all
up.
have them. Yeah,
like the whole system's set up for this. The amygdala is a modulator of sorts of CO2. Where our chemoreceptors are picking up on CO2.
What receptors?
Chemoreceptors. So they're basically you're detecting carbon dioxide in the aortic and the carotid arteries, right? And you're also got baroreceptors, which are pressure. So if your blood pressure changes, you get blood pressure changes. Like you can start to feel these things starting to change. You can get pretty intimate with a lot of the things that we've got going on under the hood that you never thought you could be. But the easy one is the panic mode, which everybody has, which is why it's called panic. And everybody's nervous system can experience that. But unfortunately, when we get ourselves into trouble with overthinking and not moving enough and not doing enough to complement this stuff or overdoing things with work, that anxious button gets hit real early.
This is why people are intolerant, frustrated, and so there's an anxious response, and they respond with aggression.
There's an aerobic component to this.
This is great. So the more fit you are, to oversimplify, potentially
in some cases, yes.
Potentially, maybe the better you'd be.
A lot of endurance athletes who feel like, or even CrossFit athletes feel like they're pretty fit. You'd be shocked to see what happens to their breathing patterns at even very low levels, where they're mouth breathing pretty early on
because of their interpretation of stress.
Bingo. Well, the first respondent when we are exercising to breathing, to our breath changing, is CO2. So as work goes up, oxygen demand goes up. So we use oxygen, as you know, and we all know, right? Yep. So what's the byproduct of that oxygen demand going up? CO2 is one of those major things. So CO2 starts to rise. So the breathing rate changes. So if I'm
from calm to,
you'll see people who are, at like less than 4% CO2 coming out of them, which I already know you're anxious. You're more anxious.
Yeah.
I can pinpoint even with other things to where it's like, your tissue's not using oxygen, but everything says that you're still aerobic, but your sympathetic nervous system's clamping down right now on things.
Cold hands, white fingertips, sweaty, whatever.
It's like you start, yeah. These are all real interesting things that I go and look at with clients and that I've seen, but all correlate to these lifestyle choices we've made, and where when I insert breathing or breath control into somebody's program, it isn't just, hey, there's some super secret breathing protocol you should do. It's like, well, what are we trying to accomplish here? Like you're getting at is like, hey, what's this, easy takeaway for people? And it's like, if you could just start with some breathing in the morning, maybe, or at some point in your morning to regulate things. Mm-hmm. Awesome. However,
downregulate.
Yes. Right. Downregulate.
Yeah. So, okay. I want to know how to properly, this is how I've categorized breathing. Maybe I got it from you. I don't know. Downregulation, box breathing, and, oh my God, stress tolerance. Mm. Okay. So the downregulation is like, we'll oversimplify, 4-8. Okay. So one inhale, 2 exhale. Yeah. Box breathing, we've already talked about. The stress piece one that we've been talking about is the one I talked about, like 4-4-8-4. So 1-1-2-1. Mm-hmm. I don't know other breathing protocols that I find to be valuable enough to.
I think there's like some apneas, like you could do like without the exhale hold. There are things like you could do like 1-2-1 or 1.
But there's 4 parts. This is where I get confused. I know your work parts here. But there always are 4 parts.
No.
There's always a pause, even if it's a fraction of a second.
A fraction of a second, yeah. But we don't.
You're saying ignore that.
You can ignore that. Yeah, you could start to work with protocol. So you're on just over a minute cycle.
11, 20 to 11.
Yeah, you're on just over a minute cycle, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's like 66 seconds or wait. Yeah.
60 per breath.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So take that and apply that to, I would say, try 20, 40, or 10, 40, 20.
Inhale for 10.
Hold for 40.
Exhale
for 20.
20. And then straight back to the breath.
Yeah. If not, go 9, 36. If that's too tough.
Yeah.
9, 36, 18.
And then what's the one down from that?
8. Multiplier of 4, 32, 16.
16. Okay. And what is apnea protocol doing?
So that's helping you develop the ability to hold on to air, which is a stress response.
See, I thought that's what I was doing with the 10, 10,
you're
20, 10.
Training your breathing pattern with that hold, with a slight hold. You're doing a double hold.
Double hold.
You're ready.
The 20 exhale and the 10 empty at the bottom is panic mode, dude. This. Like, all you want to do is get like out of that experience.
You
take a big inhale in.
You want to get to the point to where that isn't a panic mode.
Yeah, that's right.
Shouldn't move until
breathe.
that becomes.
This is why I have to back
I can
myself.
I can be with this.
Yeah.
I am content in this world. Here's the interesting thing that's going on is it's not that you're yes developing some of the CO2 tolerance. However, it's really a nervous system thing is what's going on. Is you're now becoming okay. It's just like the cold. The cold didn't 32 degrees or 34 degrees didn't get warmer. You adapted.
Got it.
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
You made the adaptation. So now
Yeah,
what?
there you go.
Oh,
yeah.
am I just going to sit here and do this one thing? Well, no, I should be the greatest cold person. Okay, great. Go be the ice man. If that's what you want to go do, or go see your next thing. But I use breathing quite frequently, like you're using, on a daily basis because it's a check-in process for me, not just on regulating, but where am I at? Like, where's my nervous system at? Sure, my HRV could say so one thing, but this is saying a whole different thing.
Whole different thing.
And I know intuitively after years of playing with this, what that means in terms of my output for the day. So then it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do? And this is where the breathing gears comes in. It's like, yeah, I go on a walk for 5 miles, my mouth's shut. And I'm largely in a very big gear 1, which would be an equal in and out, inhale, exhale.
Through the nose.
That's well over 4 seconds in length, meaning it's probably around 8 to 10 seconds if I'm walking.
Mm-hmm. So like a 5-5.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily go 5-5. I check it from time to time and I walk and I do my thing. There are, however, a few times a week where I am definitively engaged in one breath cycle every 4 to 5 seconds working, where I'm like on a bike or I'm running and I'm engaged in that process, because if I am doing that in a gear 1, I am retraining the cage.
Mm-hmm.
That this cage, my rib cage, is the epicenter of everything. Movement, physiology, the whole 9 yards. Like, this is the epicenter because this is the beginning and end point of respiration.
So if you're active on a bike, you're purposely going 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out.
No, 2 in, 2 out. I get to a point where I'm 2 in, 2 out. So here's where
2 seconds in, 2 seconds out. So it's high effort.
Gear 1 works to heart rate. So this will be some really
zone
good
1,
heart rate zone 2.
You
want to work that gear 1 up to a heart rate zone 2. That way you understand you're pretty close.
Yep.
You're pretty spot on without having to draw lactate.
Yeah.
To know that you are incinerating fat.
You could have a conversation.
You could have a conversation, but you are incinerating fat at that point.
Oh.
Yeah.
Zone 2. Is this why zone 2 is so popular right now? Zone 2 training is
it's right on the cusp of where the metabolic shift point is.
Oh.
So beyond that, you start to get another. Now you could still hold a gear 1 a little bit longer, but let's just say I'm on a bike and I'm getting up into heart rate zone 3, 4, you will want to shift up into more power nasal and even easy mouth breathing, which would be gear 4. Gear 4 is
that's in and out through the mouth.
In and out through the mouth, easy breathing. Anything above 20 breaths per minute.
Okay.
Is really, dude, just shift it. I've looked at this under metabolic, on metabolic charts, like day after day after day after day. Switch. Most people could be doing, it's you're creating more problems metabolically by not onboarding oxygen quicker now.
Through your mouth.
Because so oxygen is for the metabolic side of things. So now once I'm metabolically at a certain point, I definitely need to onboard more oxygen, or I'm creating more hydrogen.
Oh, okay. So go gear 1, in and out through your nose, chill. Gear 2, in through your nose, out through your mouth.
Gear 2 is power nose. So it's beyond that gear 1.
Got it. Okay.
Gear 3 would be nose mouth.
Nose mouth.
I use that, but it's really a transitional gear for downshifting.
Okay.
Gear 4 is easy mouth breathing. So we usually jump from gear 2 to gear 4.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. So we're very short with gear 2, but we go into gear 4, and then gear 5 is upwards of like 30 breaths per minute. It's
Yeah.
And there's time and place for that every week. There is people. And here's the funny thing is that I have not only with myself, but with a lot of people I've tested who've gotten on the nose only game are retarding. Ari was one of these people when we tested him at PI, retarding the process to using air more efficiently at those higher endpoints, at those higher intensity points. So what happens is somebody goes from nose only, then they go immediately into mouth, but they're there for like seconds and it's over.
It's over. I see.
Over.
I see. Okay.
And you should be able to hang there for a bit.
I love that you just sharpened, like get to gear 5 once a week. I love that.
5%. 5% of all training.
Should be
At
up there.
least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Per training session?
No.
No.
Just per week.
Volume. Yeah. Okay.
Volume.
So you could do, I imagine you could do it on a wind bike, right? You could do it on a rower.
30 seconds all out, you'll get there.
You'll get there. Have you tried Carol bike?
No.
Oh, I want to have you over. I've got a Carol bike and I think you're going to love this. Okay. I'm going to expose you.
Yes.
They've
me.
Been a great partner, but they've got this way, an AI-based technology. It's a bike. And what they're doing, it is call it 2-minute warm-up, 20 seconds flat out at the highest pace that you can, 2-minute recover, 20 seconds. So it's 2 bursts of 20 seconds, but they are finding the absolute sweet spot for you. And I'd love to get your take on it. I've loved
That's interesting that they're,
and it gets me right into that gear 5 with 2 20-second bursts.
Yeah.
Some of their research is that it's as efficient as a 45-minute like zone 4 workout. So I want to expose you to it.
I mean, we'll see about that. But yeah.
Okay. One last thing on this is that when I trained for, I don't know if I thanked you publicly, but when I trained for my ultra, I did the gear training.
Yeah.
And it made a massive difference. And so I didn't do heart rate.
Have you had
training.
your VO2 max tested?
I did. It was a long time ago.
But you haven't recently?
Not recently, no.
So just put this out there.
Yeah.
I'm seeing upwards of 20% increases in VO2 max with people who think they're at their limit.
What does that mean?
You're gaining 20% on your VO2 max. You've probably gained way more than you thought. Like my
goodness,
my
wow.
VO2 max is in the 60s, like high 60s. I'm 50.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't necessarily be there, but
That's pretty
based
good.
on what I do, and I have seen professional athletes have even bigger increases than that. But this isn't necessarily, oh my God, no. What we're doing is we're getting them to use through this training their breathing muscles, their primary breathing muscles. It's shocking watching professional athletes. We're so, as you know, we are so adaptable.
It's pretty amazing.
As professional athletes, you can even you can be very determined and your physiology still responds pretty well to things. Yeah. But I will see people come in and they're like, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is going to be so fun.
Yeah.
Because within 3 weeks, I've seen 50% increases in VO2 max.
And which is a marker for longevity, an important marker for overall health and longevity.
Had somebody like me not come along,
right,
to expose this hole,
right,
and it's not like we're applying some of the training, but we're like, if I hadn't given them the gears inside of training,
right,
they would still be like in these stuck positions they're in and competing at the level they are, but they're shortening their career because we know, physiologically speaking, you're using more sugar. Your tissue can only recover so much. Like it's stiffer tissue, like the fascia, all of this stuff is integrated into it's all a system. And the shortened careers that we're seeing, I think we're going to start to see much longer careers. I've got guys, do you know who Dean Karnazes is?
Yeah, of course.
So Dean did this and hits me up and he goes, dude, I've been doing this for like 8 months now. My VO2 max has increased 20%.
Amazing.
You know how long I've been running. I'm like, I've run with you.
Yeah.
I'm like,
amazing.
Like, and he goes,
so how are you translating this to people? Is it app courses, one-on-ones? What are you doing?
One-on-one work with people. I've really taken a step back to like the trying to teach and get stuff out there versus just like concentrating and having boundaries for my own life and like really living the life I want to live, which is one of a process. And, I'll probably put some of this stuff into a course. We have had the course in the past, but it's evolved so much.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
and the information is so deep. I work with clientele, and then we provide programming through our membership website to people that the gears are integrated into, and there's programs people can go through on there.
Shiftadapt.com.
Yeah. Shiftadapt.com.
Yeah.
And then it's really just the one-on-one work that people do with me. I mean, somebody like Ari, like this stuff is applied throughout his weekly program. So I provide him programming that I oversee like his altitude stuff. I oversee his breathing training. I oversee his training, like physical working out training. And then making sure he's doing like hyperbaric on certain days and not overdoing things. And,
that's awesome.
But
a true high performance director.
I'm telling you, he is the highest level athlete I have.
Ari
Emanuel is the highest level athlete I have come across.
That's pretty rad.
It is wild what he is capable of doing.
His motor is intense. I've seen it up close.
It's wild because they're worried that the younger generation doesn't have the drive and the desire. They probably just don't even have the physiology that's saying this is what I should be doing, versus like this guy really loves what he's doing. He loves helping people. He's loyal. He's so loyal, but like he can make deals happen, and he does it like that, even though he's sending you a middle finger or telling you to fuck off. And you're like, I get it. But I get it. I know what that means. You still love me.
Oh my God, amazing. Yeah. You are such a gift to people's lives. I could have this conversation over and over and over with you. Thank you for bringing the insight, the
thanks
wisdom,
for having me.
The honesty, the authenticity, the depth of knowledge, the really applied way that you can share your information. And your clients are lucky. People in your life are lucky to have you. And I'm lucky to have you here. So
thanks.
Thank you, man.
Well, I appreciate you having me. And ditto, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. I like having this conversation with you.
Yeah. Let's do more.
Yeah.